this episode of the Naturist Living Show, Lessons from History.
This episode of the Naturist Living Show is brought to you by Bare Oaks Family Naturist Park. At Bare Oaks, we offer traditional naturist values in a modern setting. Free your body, free your mind. www.bareoaks.ca.
Yes, I really needed it. I've never seen anything so delightfully natural.
Now, those kids have the time of their lives out there.
Did you call about my car?
I'll take care of it on my way to Tampa.
Oh, you're going to Tampa?
I go in almost every day. I bring the oranges in from the groves.
Those people,
They're members of the Garden of Eden. They're going in for a swim.
But they haven't any...
Any clothes on? Of course not. Nobody wears them here, except when they go out during the evening.
Well, who brought you to this place?
Oh, John Roy, the famous director. I studied drama with him.
Does he live here?
Sure, he comes every year. Why, if it weren't for him, I never would have known about this place. You see, he fixed it so I could work here at the park, help make ends meet.
Park?
Yeah, park or camp, whichever you want to call it. The grounds here are dedicated to sunbathing.
This is no place for Joan and me.
But you just said you've never seen anything so delightfully natural.
Yes, but I meant the children. Why, those people are grown-ups.
Yes, they are grown. Does that make bodies any less natural?
Well, I just don't think that men and women should...
Walk around as God made them in his image? Well, you're entitled to your opinion, and I'm not asking you to change it.
Well, I didn't say you were. Please understand. It's just that, well, we just can't stay here any longer.
All right, I can take you back to your car or drop you off in Tampa.
No, I don't want to go back to Tampa.
You say that as if you wanted by the FBI.
Please don't make fun. It's just that, well, Tampa holds unpleasant memories for me.
Oh, you want to tell me about it? I'm a good listener.
Not now. It's something rather personal.
All right, I'll tell you what. Why don't you stay in here? Nobody's going to bother you, and then when I find out about your car, I'll call you.
All right.
Good.
Thanks.
Oh, by the way, in case you get hungry, just go down the road. Turn to your right.
Thanks.
Mommy, look. These are for you.
Joan, where are your clothes?
Out there.
Well, who told you could take them off?
Nobody.
Then why'd you do it?
Gosh, Mommy, nobody wears clothes here, and I want to be like the other kids.
I understand, darling, but you'd better stay in here with Mommy, huh?
Mommy, I told the kids I'd be right out. I'm having such a good time.
Slip something on and go get your dress now.
Gee, Mommy, why can't I play outside?
Well, Johnny went to see about the car, and we have to get dressed.
Why, Mommy, nobody cares what I wear, and the sun feels so good all over.
I know it does, dear, but...
The real kid, Mommy. I never had any kids to play with at Grandpa's. Please, Mommy.
All right, dear. But stay where Mommy can see you.
That was a scene from the 1954 movie called The Garden of Eden. The voices you heard was Jamie O'Hara as Susan Lattimore, and Mickey Knox as Johnny Patterson, and Karen Sue Trent playing the little girl, Joan Lattimore. And in a theme which is very common in a lot of naturist fiction, a single mother, shocking back then, but she was single because her husband was killed in the war. This is 1954, shortly after World War II. And lives with a nasty father-in-law and decides to go on her own, and car breaks down and ends up, surprise, surprise, in a naturist club. And of course she doesn't know because she arrives at night until the morning, and that's the little interlude that you heard in that particular story. The reason I'm playing this is because I was at the Garden of Eden in January. It's actually Lake Como near Tampa is the club where this was filmed back in the early 50s. And there are many fine clubs in the Lake Como area, the Tampa area. In Pasco counties, where you also have Caliente and Paradise Lakes, and a few other clubs in addition to that. It's apparently the densest It's the highest naturist density in the United States, perhaps in the world. Who knows? Anyway, I was there. I decided to stay at this much older club in Rustic because I wanted to experience a smaller club, maybe a more passionate club, less commercial. And I was curious about the history. And I stayed in a little motel room, which, while clean and comfortable, felt and looked just like it did in that 1954 movie. It probably was there, based on the aerial photos. It certainly was. The building was certainly there at that time. And it looks pretty much like it probably did at the time. It felt like a bit of a time warp. I felt I could have been Joan Lattimore sitting in that motel room just as she is in the movie. It made me think that I need to do an episode on history because, as the American philosopher George Santayana said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And that's very true of a lot of things, but in particular naturism. I've been very clear in the past. It shows that we've done that. I believe that naturism in a lot of cases has lost something, has lost the passion, the raison d'être, the reason for being. For many people, it's become simply an alternative to wearing a bathing suit, and that's it. Gone are the physical, psychological, environmental, and social and moral values that were behind the movement, in many cases, not everywhere, and that's why I've very proudly always said that Bare Oaks is traditional naturist values in a modern setting, because the two are not inconsistent. And so in always thinking that newer is better and that we've reinvented things, we forget that many things have been tried and tested before. Most ideas aren't new. I'm always amused by, how people are excited about social media. And certainly the way it's delivered now is new. But I've got to tell you that I was using social media back in 1978 because being the slight geek that I was on a system called CompuServe where they had chat room. Oh, it was all text and you had to use an acoustic coupler to connect your telephone to the modem, and it was very slow at 300 baud, which at the time I thought was blazingly fast compared to others. So social media existed back then, and it existed on the internet back in the late 80s when I first got on the internet, before the World Wide Web. There were discussion forums. They were called news groups. And that was social media as well. In fact, that's how I first found out about naturism personally. I posted in a group called Rec Nude, which, because the internet was limited to academics and scientists and computer geeks like myself, wasn't spammed all the time, and Rec Nude was a real source of good information. Of course, all I found out from Rec Nude was the mailing address for the Federation of Canadian Naturists, which led me to write them a letter, from which they sent me a letter with the address of Glen Echo, which was the first club I visited. So we can see it a lot in movies. We can also see it in magazines from the time, but going back nearly a century, we see it in the early movies, the passion, the philosophy. Certainly several of those were slightly exploitive. The producers behind them were trying to make money by showing skin. And we talk about that in one of the earlier episodes we did on naturist movies and nudist films. But the people that were portrayed were often naturists, and their passion and their philosophy really showed, as it does in this clip from the film Elysium from 1934.
Well, Doctor, it still puzzles me why people of both sexes and all ages gather together in various nudist camps to collectively enjoy the benefits of air and sunshine, rather than practice nudism privately.
Well, the feeling which impels nudists to enjoy their recreation collectively is no stranger and no different than that feeling which impels all sorts of people throughout the world to dine collectively, play games together, or attend amusements in droves. It is merely the natural desire for social contact. And in nudism, that contact is quite as moral as under the other conditions that I have mentioned, and far more moral than that which pertains at dances, nightclubs, or at the average bathing beaches throughout America. For nudists, carefully safeguard the morals of their converts at all times.
Doctor, I can truthfully vouch for that, because I have never been anywhere and seen people conduct themselves in a more wholesome manner.
But we don't have to go to the movies only to find that history and the passion. There are still naturists alive today who were around. So I went to visit Doug Beckett. And Doug is 86 years old. And so him and his wife, Helen, were witnesses to the early days of naturism where they joined it in the early 50s. So what follows is my interview with Doug Beckett at his home in Barrie, Ontario.
We had lived in Thunder Bay for 10 years before we came into this part of the country. And the only cottage country was along the Thunder Bay shore. Thunder Bay was a large squarish bay that in one corner, Fort William and Port Arthur were the only communities, and the rest was very much uninhabited. But so that you could go out for just about anywhere and have a picnic and put your blanket out and sunbathe and so forth. But that wasn't available down here. And but what was available was Ray Connett's Sunbathing for Health magazine, which we started to read, and that sounded interesting. And especially since there was a club that would be within 25 miles of us, so we contacted the club, a club member, and whose name was in the magazine, one of the officers of the club, and were interviewed, and then had the directions of how to get to the club, and turned up one June day when the temperature was about 50, and everybody was dressed quite warmly, but it very quickly warmed up, fortunately, and so we quickly acquired a tent and joined the club.
That was a much bigger deal than it is today in terms of breaking societal norms in 1958. What made you decide to do that? Was it a hard decision?
No, because we had taken a canoe trip once in northern Ontario. There was a chain of lakes and cottages on the first lakes and nobody on the next three. And we'd taken a canoe trip, found a camping spot, ideal little bay and the sand beach and all that, and a couple of miles by water from the nearest cottage, and absolutely no access at all by land, thick bush. So we found that in such an environment in hot summer weather, who needed the clothes? So we canoed in the nude, and we swam in the nude, and so forth. And this seemed to be great.
So how did you get your hands on a copy of Sunbathing for Health? I mean, that must have been a fairly subversive magazine back then. You couldn't just pick it up anywhere.
No. It was published in Toronto, but that was Toronto the Good, and you couldn't buy it in Toronto, but you could buy it in Thunder Bay. You could buy it in Barrie. You could buy it just about anywhere in English-speaking Canada, but Toronto.
And so what was that first club you visited?
The first club was Glenecho, because it was, only 25 miles from where we are. What could be better?
So in 1958, Gleneco was only 3 years old.
Yes.
What was it like?
Well, it was very simple. You have to consider that in 58 there was very little camping equipment because before the war, camping wasn't done, just wasn't done, and there were only tents. There was no trailers or not even camping trailers. And so there was old army-built tents and other things that had come from Europe and so forth. And there was volleyball because all you needed was 2 poles and a net and a ball. And there was horseshoes. And they were just in the process of making the first pond. At the moment, it was quite a wet swamp hole.
So there wasn't even any swimming?
No. So what they did was we had a great fun on days, summer days was clearing the bush. It was sort of an alder swamp. And then Eddie brought in equipment and they made a little pond, about a little less than half the size of the existing pond. And we had swimming. And we had a little clubhouse, which was about 16 feet square, and but adequate to take most of the people if it rained. And the sunning area was very much as it is, and the sports area was very much as it is.
So there was only a few dozen members from what you're suggesting.
We were family number 23. And one of the chaps that we were talking to, because we were new to the group, said, where did you come from? And well, he said, we're Canadians. We've always been here. And he turned around and shouted out to the gang and said, hey, gang, this thing's going to catch on. Here come a couple of Canadians. Because at that time, the membership was English, German, French, a few French, and Dutch. Yeah.
Now, you were a young couple at the time?
Well, we had a 6-year-old daughter.
Were most people younger, or was it a mix?
Most people were in their 30s. Old enough to be able to think on their own and not do what everybody else was doing. And they were from various parts of the world, and most of them had been naturists in Europe.
So tell me about the process back then. You found a mailing address in the back of Sunbathing for Health, and you wrote them a letter?
Well, no, that was rather odd. They gave a name, of the Dutch name, but I don't think there was a mailing address for the club. In those days, you sent your request into the magazine, and they wrote you back and told you where the nearest club was. But this Dutch name was rather unique, and I looked it up in the Toronto phone book, and it was the only, there was just the one name. So I picked up the phone and phoned this Toronto phone number, and of course, it was the Gleneco man, and we talked and made a reservation for a meeting.
And you met at Gleneco, or you met somewhere else?
We met at Gleneco.
So your first interview was at Gleneco?
Yes.
Was that typical back then?
No, pardon me. We were interviewed in Toronto. I was in Toronto on business. And we were interviewed then, and Helen had to be with me. And then we went from there.
What kind of questions did he ask? Do you remember?
Oh, about how we got started in naturism and various things about our interests and hobbies and activities and what we thought about being unclothed with other people around and so forth.
So, and obviously they found you to be suitable.
They did. And then they wrote out the directions on how to get to the club.
So it was all pretty secretive at the time.
It was. Well, it was, but it was reassuring because you knew that everybody else had passed the same course.
And as I understand, you were not joining Glen Echo, you were joining TGS, the Toronto Gymnosophical Society.
That was it, yes, actually. That Eddie and Mary owned the property, and we rented the property from them. And the name TGS was taken because most people wouldn't recognize that gymnosophical was actually a Greek word that meant nature.
So in the beginning, back in the early 50s, early to mid-50s, when you first got involved in naturism, were places like TGS and Glen Echo, were they clothing optional?
No, it was always nude only.
And what if somebody came and his wife didn't want to participate? Didn't want to take her clothes off? What did you do?
Well, we had one classic example of that. I guess we'd been going 5 or 6 years. A couple came in and she had a one-piece black swimsuit. And she said, well, my husband can be nude, but I'm not. So Eddie said, I'm sorry. You can't be here without your husband or wife, and both must be nude.
So, and is it true that back then you could only use first names?
Yes, until you got to know the person and became an outside friend as well. Mm-hmm. And then there was a lot of great friendships made.
Things have changed a fair bit today. People try to be, a lot of clubs have gone clothing optional in an attempt to be, I guess, more inclusive. Do you think that's a good idea?
No. As one chap said, whose rule is nude only, he said, I always look at people who want to be clothed in a naturist park as being voyeurs or exhibitionists or a bit of both, which he said doesn't interest me at all. And he said that, and I know this in another club that is also strictly nude, that they're the two happiest clubs I know. Because nobody is sitting there wondering, well, why is he dressed? The temperature's 80 degrees and everybody else is in the nude.
Now, clubs are also much more open today. They can openly advertise. You can basically drive up to one and check in. Do you think that's a good thing?
I think it takes a certain amount of talking to. Because, as this one club owner said, I congratulated him on it. It was a small club, and neither he or his wife made a circuit about 9 o'clock in the nude, rain or shine, and said what the activities would be of the day. And I said, that really made us feel as part of it. And you always had your cheery smiles. He said, I always did. But he said, did you see my eyes? And I said, not particular. He said, I'm watching. For people who don't obey the club rules or don't seem to fit in. And then he said, we have a little talk and tell them that perhaps they don't quite get the message here.
Now, TGS was the club. Glen Echo was the property owned by Eddie and Mary that was being rented, I assume, from TGS. How did that change and why?
It changed because Eddie was getting, I think, a per capita rent. And Eddie said, now, this thing has got to grow to make it worth my while, because I'm going to have to do a fair bit of work here. I mean, it costs money to dig the pond. It costs money to clear out some dead trees and so forth. So that was fine. We went along. And then the TGS board got a little too comfortable and didn't promote too much. And in fact, the president at that time spent a lot of time in the back part of the property. He had built a little rifle range, so which wasn't particularly characteristic either. So then Eddie finally came to them and said, look, either you promote and get membership so I can make this venture financially worthwhile, or I'll take it over and do the promoting. Well, they sort of hemmed and hawed and so forth and said, well, things take a long time to happen here because the membership is a democratic organization, and Sunday afternoons we would have to sit in a big group and decide what to do about one thing and another. And I would rather just sit in the sun, so by force of lack of push and interest, Eddie didn't get his promotion, and so he said, I'm taking over. And he said he said there'll be a board of directors, and we'll have one seat on it, and there went from there.
Was there a board of directors?
For a while, yes. But there was straight lethargy on the point of the membership. There were people who said, well, gee, we've got 50 members. Maybe that's enough. Maybe we can just close it for us.
So did Eddie and Mary do better when they got rid of TGS and became Glen Echo?
I don't know. I think the people would have come either way.
So the park grew, but then at one point it started to drop again. Why do you think that was?
I think for lack of enthusiastic leadership. This was the thing, in the earlier years, there was the fact that there was a lot of the European naturists and who thought, well, this is great. We've found Canada, and not only that, we've found that we have our good old naturism that we had in Europe. So that they really threw a lot of effort into it. And that Eddie, in his reminiscence, has forgotten a lot of things that were done.
So a lot of the club in the beginning was built by the members.
Well, it was little things, but done by the members, yes. There was less worry about conveniences. It was naturism was much more simple. Mm-hmm. As I said, our accommodation was tents. And some of the Germans were amusing because the German style at that time was how long can you have a holiday in the outback with the very minimum of equipment that you can carry on one trip. And so I remember there was one family of a mother and father and I guess about a 7-year-old girl, and they had a pup tent. And they'd put a few rocks in the little creek that was going by, and made a bit of a basin, and that's where you washed and on the downstream side and took your water from the upstream side.
Now, there's a lot of stories about clubs at the beginning of naturism where you couldn't smoke, you couldn't eat meat, you had to do mandatory exercises every morning. Was Glen Echo or TGS like that?
No. There was just one rule, no drinking. Eddie said, I have been a bell captain in the Royal Oak Hotel for some years. And he said, I have seen so many degraded drunks in my life. And people who were well up in business, who just on an hour or two off would get sloppy drunk and whatever.
Did you visit other clubs at the time, over the years around Toronto?
Oh, yes, I've been to Four Seasons and at the Ponderosa and the Lily Valley, yeah. And we used to go to Lakesun for holidays until Hans took exception to the way we started the FCN. So I wasn't too welcome there. But we went to one of the French clubs, I think it was Bel Air, and were very kindly accepted there. Oh, yes. Well, we have been a regular visitor for many years to Sunny Glades. And, of course, Jewel Lake. We were one of the very early people in Jewel Lake.
Did you ever visit Sun Valley Gardens?
I think we were there only once.
And what did you think? That's a legendary place.
It was quite active at that time because Carl Rule had a very good way of attracting the press's interest. And it was when he came and started Sun Valley Gardens that the media found that they had nudist in their province. And because he had promotions and whatnot.
For those who have visited Bear Oaks Family Naturist Park, you'll know that one of the main camping areas is known as Beckett Circle. And yes, it is named after Doug and Ellen Beckett, because not only was Doug an early pioneer in terms of joining Glen Echo, he also was one of the founders of the Federation of Canadian Naturists. So in listening to his story and his recollections from the beginning of naturism in the 50s, I note a lot of values which I think we are either missing or that we are in some of the more passionate clubs trying to bring back. But we also see that naturism was much harder to find back then. It was much smaller. You know, a club with 50 or 100 people was a big club. It was much simpler, and people were willing to do with a lot less. And I'm not saying that people should go back to that. We shouldn't force people to be vegetarians or stop smoking or drinking either. There is a certain amount of freedom now in naturism. But there are values behind it, and health is very important. Respect for self, respect for the environment, that's mental health, that is physical health, that is environmental health. And those are very, very important values. Living a better way. It's a social experiment, really, that we're trying to do. We're trying to also provide people with an antidote to many of the ills that afflict society today. We are providing therapy for a lot of people who have been psychologically and emotionally damaged by the warped ideas about body image and about sexuality and about interpersonal relationships that are in today's society. Interestingly enough, I find that, Doug was in his 30s when he joined Naturism, as were most people in the club, and I'm sure to him right now that seems very young. But it's not the youth that everybody's always looking for. And I've always maintained that young people in their 20s, first of all, represent a small percentage of the overall population anyway, but also are less likely to join in those years if they didn't grow up in naturism, because they want to be with their friends, because they don't have the means to travel there, because they are very self-conscious still at that age. At Bear Oaks, I think we have a good cross-section of all ages, actually. I actually had a comment written in on one of the websites, doesn't matter which one, where somebody who came to the park, and of course they're anonymous, complains that there weren't enough young people around. Well, if people are coming to the park expecting to see young, nimble bodies, particularly of women, they're probably coming for the wrong reason. We certainly have young people. We have some people who are in great shape. We have some people who are not so great shape. We have a very, very average, very normal cross-section of the population. We have teenagers. We have children. We have elderly people as well. That's a normal group. But somehow people have gotten this idea that the place should be full of young people, that it should be like some sort of fantasy that you see in some of these websites or videos, or that you see even in magazines, in the old adult magazines and Playboy fantasies. That's not naturism. Naturism is the world, is a cross-section of the world. And those beautiful bodies don't even exist in real life anyway. So it is possible to attract young people. But if we want to attract young people, we must stand for something. We must have passion. It has to be a lot more than just taking your bathing suit off, because that doesn't mean much to anybody. It's not enough of a motivation for people to find a place and join. People are looking for passion. They're looking for something that means something to them, that adds meaning to their lives. And naturism can certainly do that and help them. But that's a topic for a whole other show. We have a show coming up on that subject. And we have a show coming up on women in naturism. And we have another show on vitamin D and sunshine. I've got a lot of interviews lined up and done that I'm working into future shows. So that'll be it for today. Thank you again for listening. I'm really, really impressed to see we have over 30,000 downloads of the show at this point. And it keeps growing every day. And what's really interesting is to see that even the oldest shows continue to be downloaded and listened to. So people are obviously finding the show and catching up on all the episodes from the very beginning. If you have any thoughts, questions, suggestions, ideas, comments, anything at all, please send me an email. I love to read them. Send them to naturistliving@bareoaks.ca. That's B-A-R-E, of course. My name is Stéphane Deschênes, and I'm the owner of Bear Oaks Family Naturist Park, and it was my pleasure to be your host for this episode of the Naturist Living Show. Thank you for listening again, and join me in approximately one more month for the next episode of the Naturist Living Show.
This episode of the Naturist Living Show was brought to you by Bear Oaks Family Naturist Park. Traditional naturist values in a modern setting. Traditional values means that naturism is more than just taking your clothes off. It is a life philosophy with physical, psychological, environmental, social, and moral benefits. Bear Oaks Family Naturist Park strives to promote those naturist values in a modern setting that provides the amenities and services that our members and visitors expect. Free your body, free your mind. Learn more at www.bareoaks.ca.